What do you think is the biggest threat to humanity?
On a very broad sense, I think the splitting of us into these different epistemic worlds where we have totally different realities is like destroying our ability to communicate with each other. And I worry if that continues to happen and continues to accelerate outwards, I don't know if it would be civil war or just like a total breakdown in government because we can't pass any legislation. That's probably the biggest threat right now. What is it? A nation divided against itself cannot stand.
Graham and I contend over who we have on the podcast quite often.
Man.
And I know that you've at some point collaborated with Nick Fuentes, who's a very controversial person. Now, I want to know what your stance is on bringing certain people onto your platform and giving them exposure, albeit you're, contending with them and disagreeing with them and maybe raising really good points that go against what they're saying. What do you think about giving them, I would say, another, like a microphone?
It's a very, very, very challenging balancing act, but I'll tend to hear out most people with kind of like that open mind philosophy, like come in, talk to me, and then I'm going to try to tell you why I think you're wrong while being as empathetic or understanding as possible. Something unique that I provide that I think is really important to some of these alternative communities is I'm like the only person that is progressive that like isn't unhinged. And I think it's really good sometimes to show people that like, hey, you can be pro LGBT, you can have like blue hair, be in like weird relationships or whatever, but I can be like a funny, cool, charismatic, like we can have fun and chill, and I can be like understanding of you and not be like super judgmental or try to cancel you and be horrible. For a lot of people, I think that seeing somebody like that on my side is really important because representation for progressives is absolutely dog shit right now on the internet. So to some extent, when I'm platforming other people, that's a thing that I'm keeping in mind. There's a lot of those communities that I've interacted with who I'm like the first positive representation of like a left-leaning person they've ever seen. That's one thing. A second thing is, if I am platforming somebody like that, I'm trying to make sure that everybody understands where I'm at. Like, I'm not just having the person on to like laugh and giggle and like play games. Like generally, like with Fuentes, it was a lot of debating, a lot of arguing over different points. So hopefully, one, I can demonstrate to his audience that there are at least some arguments on the other side. And then two, my audience can see the arguments I'm having, and then they've got like more tools to like deal with that type of stuff in the future. One thing I don't agree with is I don't like burying your head in the sand and pretending that some people aren't saying certain things. You should be able to deal with a lot of those arguments without being like, oh my God, my whole audience suddenly turned into Nazis. Because I think we've gone down that road so far that, and I think platforms are finally starting to reverse course. We got to this ridiculous world where like half the country is believing in things that you can't talk about on any social media platform. Can't talk about vaccine skepticism, can't talk about election being stolen, can't talk about like COVID-19 theories or whatever. I personally, I think these things are harmful ideas. I think they're bad, but if half the country believes in them, how are we not having conversations about them? How is nobody allowed to talk about it?
The problem is the algorithm, where once you get on one of those topics, the algorithm is so good that it just recommends more and more and more, and they pile on top of each other, and then you get more and more and more extreme because those are what's getting clicks. That's what's keeping people on the platforms.
Yeah, but the goal is to like
easy to chop it off right there.
Yeah, but I mean, the sharpening of the sword should be on the side of the people arguing against it, right? Like if people are getting lost down like certain algorithms, it happens on the left and the right, where people get lost down certain algorithms. People on the left need to do a better job at providing better arguments in like a more entertaining way, because I feel like people on the left are so like dogmatic, and then they're so like condescending in their approach, where it's like you either believe me or you're an immoral bigot, and that's all I'm going to say to you. And then on the right, like all of their figures are like highly entertaining, right? The Tates are very entertaining. Alex Jones is very entertaining. Like you've got like all these figures that, and I think they spread harmful ideas, but like fuck, I'm not gonna lie and say they're not funny as hell while they're doing it. They're not like super entertaining. And then on our side, we just have like a bunch of like people that are basically like condescending and patronizing to you, and it's like fuck, like it's just not a good look.
Well, that's a great point.
Yeah,
the way the foundational view that I have is essentially is that like we've like done like one of the most dangerous things in all of human history is we've said that like the most educated man in all of society has the exact same vote as like a homeless dude. Both of their opinions count for one vote in one election. And if we're going to give citizens the ability to go down and equal to every other citizen decide to vote on a leader that they want, if we're going to entrust the power into the people to run, essentially choose like our elected officials, how do you not trust them to talk about like COVID-19? That's insane to me.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you.
So what are your thoughts then on the Rogan and is it Peter Hotez?
Yeah.
debate. What do you think about that? I don't know if have you heard about that, Graham?
I'm not familiar.
So Rogan had on RFK Jr.
Yes.
recently, and he was bringing up skepticism towards the vaccine and vaccine mandates and stuff like that. And then Peter Hotez,
Skepticism.
right? Skepticism or denying or whatever it may be. Yeah. Peter Hotez, I'm not super familiar with the story. Peter Hotez goes and he tweets him basically saying like, oh, like why are you spreading all of this? I don't know. I
think I saw some of that on
misinformation
Twitter.
or disinformation or whatever.
Yeah.
And then Rogan said, I would love to facilitate a debate between you two. And then Rogan said, I'll donate $100,000 if I can facilitate this debate on my podcast. And then Hotez said, oh, Rogan, that's what you spend on a weekend hunting with your boys. Like, I know with the Spotify deal with this, you have a bunch of money. So 50 million is the dollar amount that I'm willing to actually agree to.
Jesus.
Which is absurd. And then basically everyone's now pitching in. So you have like Twitter accounts that are like verified checkmark people. Like, I don't know, maybe they're not even that credible or
I think
anything.
it was Mark Cuban who threw in like $100,000.
No, Mark Cuban is like, Rogan, why would you ever platform? You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, why would you ever platform?
Mark Cuban came out with a good ass message.
Yeah, he was like
what a
mad
champion.
at Joe Rogan.
Hell
and
yeah.
of course, RFK Jr. because he's like very pro-vaccine mandate and stuff like that. So anyways, this whole debate's happening. Everyone's trying to raise funding to have this debate. What do you think about that?
This is a very big frustration that I have. When I have to argue against a lot of these people, I have spent a lot of time reading research, reading studies, spending time on Wikipedia, figuring out like I have to learn so much shit because it's not my area of expertise, right? And all this research that I'm doing, like all this, every time like a new conspiracy theory comes out, like I have to like do more reading and more research to get like a handle on like immunology, viruses, like all this shit. I wish that people in the academic world spent a little bit more time on public outreach because I don't think that like the job should be left to people like me to do it. All of my ability and bonuses and stats in life are on this kind of like rhetorical and argumentative side, and I'm pretty smart, so I can do the research too. But goddamn, like rather than me, who's really good at debate, trying to research my way up there, why not take a guy that's really, really well researched and then have him just like practice a little bit in terms of debate or conversation? I've seen the Hotez guy talk before, and I don't think he would be the good choice for that RFK debate. He seems pretty knowledgeable, but he doesn't handle himself very well in conversations. So I wish that more academics would practice that outreach, because at the end of the day, if whatever you're studying in academia, dies on the walls of your classroom, what's the point of anything you're doing, right? You might believe all of this and can prove all of it, but nobody in society does. What value do you have to anybody? Yeah, that's very frustrating to me.
So you think the debate should happen?
I think the debate should happen, but you need to find academics who are
You
more...
think it shouldn't be Hotez?
I don't, based on, I've only seen a little, I probably only watched like 30 minutes of arguing. Based on a little bit I've seen, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that can aggressively handle himself in a confrontational
charismatic or
situation.
anything. A lot of the times when you debate conservatives, I've noticed that you debate them very aggressively. Do you think that it would work in your favor if the end goal is to actually convert conservatives to having a more liberal perspective, would be to debate more compassionately? Like you said, how, if you slander someone or you morally grandstand on them or you call them a bigot, that's not the best way of converting people towards your ideology. Do you think if you went into it with more compassion, that it would actually yield better results?
Yeah, I think so. It's funny that you asked me that question because the research must have been on relatively older videos, because my recent approach has been like very, very, very compassionate. Usually the pushback I get from my audience or other people's that I'm way too nice to conservatives. Like a lot of people call me like a Nazi or a fascist or whatever, just because I like try to be pretty empathetic and understanding when I'm arguing with conservatives, and I tend to do a pretty good job at that. But my relationship with people on the left is so adversarial that like a lot of people are like, oh, you have no charity for people on the left, you're so nice to conservatives and blah blah blah. So
why do people on the left hate you?
There's something called another bias, cognitive bias, something called the bigotry of small differences. If you're arguing with somebody that is ideologically very different than you, there's not much they can say to actually like hurt or upset you, right? Like if I'm talking to a conservative and they say like, oh, like you support the gay agenda and you're blah blah blah, and I'm like, okay, maybe. But if I'm disagreeing with a person on the left, their insults are like, oh, you're racist, you're homophobic, you're bigoted. And it's like, no, you feel a lot more strongly attacked by insults that are coming from people that are more ideologically similar to you, because you don't see yourself as the insults they're giving. Whereas like for a conservative, I could understand a conservative saying that like, oh, you're like a cuck SJW, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, to you, I probably am. But like when a person on the left is saying like, you're a horrible racist person that is like filled with hatred, it's like, I'm absolutely not. So I think for people that are more ideologically similar to you, you're more likely to fight with them. I think this happens to conservatives and people on the left.
And what was it that helped you pivot from being more aggressive towards your adversaries to a more compassionate?
I think just strategy analysis over time. Like in 2016, when I started debating, my whole kind of like shtick was that I was like the aggressive leftist debater, that like no other person on the left was willing to do that. But just like over time, as I talk to people, as I communicate to people, as I learn and understand more about people, I start to realize that like if I change somebody's mind, I have to understand where they're coming from. Otherwise, it's basically like I can come into your audience and I can just basically shit on you and attack you so hard that like some members of the audience like think you did so bad that they kind of want to like abandon you. Or I can step in and be like, listen, I know where you're coming from. Like, let's talk about this or this. And that seems to be a more effective strategy overall to getting people.
Do you feel like your blue hair helps or hurts you?
That's a really hard one. I like to have a wide scope in terms of like what I present as and what I'm capable of. So in some ways it hurts me because it puts me immediately on kind of like a back foot because like, oh, you're blue haired, blah, 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 blah. But then like, it's also funny to come on and be the blue haired guy, but like the other people are the ones like screaming and losing their mind. And I'm like trying to be like rational, reasonable, whatever. So there's like there's a big like dissonance when somebody sees me and they're like, oh, this guy's probably going to come up and scream about how we're all racist or whatever. But then like I'll come on and make edgy jokes and like be chill or whatever. And so I think it helps a little bit. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people on the right could completely just ignore you.
Dismiss you, yeah.
Because they see like the beard or whatever. They see just the Destiny, like your own merch on your chest. And then
The beard?
Yeah,
The beard.
I don't know.
The
like,
beard.
like,
You know Jesus had a beard,
things.
right?
All right,
Jack, the beard.
Can we
does
cut
Matt
that?
Walsh,
The
so
beard?
I guess we could. The beard is fine. Okay,
Okay,
maybe
thank you.
The
yeah,
beard
anyways.
makes
The
no
blue
sense.
hair.
The blue hair, maybe
Okay.
like the beard is groomed pretty well. Okay, I'm not. I'm
No,
gonna
that's
give up
all
on
right.
this
I'm gonna
with
get a
your
septum
beard.
piercing.
No, it's
So
good,
yeah, go ahead.
But you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah, no, I
if
understand.
you
Yeah.
presented yourself in a very professional way,
Mm-hmm.
right, rather than what a lot of people view the liberals as. Do you think that it could help convert also more people from the right? And it's also
I think
something
it could.
different. It differentiates you. I feel like from just the stereotype that a lot of the conservatives see. And then that would be enough of a shocker to hopefully give them some space in their brain where you can help them fill that with something
There's like
of your ideology.
Yeah, there's a very delicate balancing act between like how much do I want to, I don't want to say compromise, but like how much do I want to change my demeanor about me to appeal to somebody else versus what ground do I want to fight over? And that's just like a subjective feeling like every time. Like I can either say like I'm gonna dress in a suit and tie, be very professional, go talk to you, because I don't even want to try to convince you about appearance or anything. Or I can say actually, appearance is one of the grounds that I do want to fight on. I do want to convince you of that. I should be able to talk to you. You should be able to hear me. And as long as I'm making good arguments and I'm having fun and everybody's like being chill or whatever, even though I look a certain way, it shouldn't be a bother to you. And hopefully that like moves you a bit, like it moves the needle a bit on like the appearance thing. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to ultimate like what do you want to fight over? You know?
See, I feel like your appearance helps you with personal branding and online marketing.
It absolutely does for that because
But,
now
yeah.
so many people are like, oh my God, you're the blue haired guy
Yes.
on TikTok. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've seen some of your interviews on whatever. It stands out because of the hair.
The blue hair.
But I feel like when debating with certain people, they might dismiss you a little bit too quickly because of that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Why do you go on whatever?
I'm really good at going into other environments and like synergizing really well with, especially in hostile environments. So I like going on whatever because their audience is like primed to hate me, but I can still go on, have a good time, get a whole new audience to view me in a positive light, and then I like win fans in favor, and it's a usually fun.
Why do they hate you?
Because we're ideologically completely different. I hate almost every single thing red pill people stand for, and they're all tend to be like more like conservative or anti-establishment in views. So I'm like the exact opposite too.
What are the biggest things you guys clash on though?
Well, the last time I was there 2 days ago was a debate on abortion. So that was but it was just me versus another set of people. Other times, so like red pill stuff, basically everything. My view of like red pill is basically like red pillers hate women and then they try to tell you all the ways you could f them over. And that's like the entirety of like the red pill ideology. That's what it feels like to me. That's not like the best Steelman version of it, but that's
That's not how
feeling.
they frame it.
Huh?
That's not how they.
No, of course not. The way that they frame it is through
working on yourself.
Yeah, it's male empowerment
productive.
to put yourself in an area where you have so much success and power that you're able to attract and achieve whatever you want with whatever woman you want. Essentially, yeah.
So what is your advice for a young single guy out there? If he wants to improve himself, he wants to get better at dating.
It's such a complicated question. This is like, this advice could be so broad it's worthless, but like my advice is you need to find warm spaces where you can have friendships and conversations with women. That is the most important thing you can do. If you have no women in your life at all, and you're going to start trying to pick one up on like Tinder or pick one up publicly, you don't even know how to talk to a woman. Like start with warm spaces where you can make friends with women, learn how to talk and not be fucking scared or afraid or whatever. And then like, even you meet women through women and you meet women in spaces with women. Like from there, you can kind of start to build out, you know, like yeah, I guess like you're eventually hopefully to get to dating or whatever. You can talk about like other things. People are like talking about like money and looks and all that shit. But I mean, like there's plenty of guys that fuck that look really bad and don't have any money because they just like they put effort into it and they try to do it. And there's plenty of guys with money that look really good that fuck way less than people think. So yeah.
What do you think of What Is a Woman?
I thought it was a really well done film. I think it's very convincing. And
Did you watch the whole thing?
Yeah.
And what did you think about Elon Musk pinning it as a tweet saying every parent should watch this?
Elon is the most cringe person in the universe.
You don't think that every parent should watch it?
No.
Why not? What did you disagree with of the documentary, What Is a Woman?
Well, I disagree with the whole point of the film, obviously. I think that the funny thing is that I think that in a very roundabout way, if you engage with it like intellectually, the film makes a really good point. But I think it makes the point in the opposite way that it thinks it does. But I think if you just like watch it normally, you're going to come away thinking like, oh, obviously a woman is like an adult human female wife, like Matt Walsh's wife says in the end or whatever. Without getting into all this cringe like theory of language stuff, on a very, very basic level, language is very, very, very complicated. The way that we use words is very complicated. I've argued with a friend for like 2 days about what the word based means. Okay. Language is very, very, very complicated. The way that I view language is typically when you say one word, as soon as you say that word, there's a bunch of peripheral things that kind of like light up next to that word. And you can kind of like move through these peripheral things. But to define a word exactly is very challenging. So like, for example, we can take something very, very, very basic, like a chair. When I say chair, a whole bunch of things come to mind immediately. Maybe the color brown, maybe wood, maybe 4 legs, maybe a back. There's a whole bunch of things. But if I try to say like exactly what is a chair, any and all of these things could theoretically be up for debate, right? Like, is a beanbag chair a chair? Is a chair with 3 legs a chair? Obviously. What about a chair with no back? What's the difference between a chair and a table? Like, that becomes like, for instance, if I say chair and I say table, there's a lot of the same concepts light up, right? So broadly speaking, that's how we view language, I think. And that's not a basic concept. So when a conservative walks in and like, what is a woman? Like there's like some concrete definitive answer. Gender is very, very, very complicated. And I think that the best answer on the show was actually given by Jordan Peterson, because when Matt Walsh asked him, what is a woman? Jordan Peterson's answer is relatively insightful. Like, I think he ends up, he says things like, well, maybe you'd have a better chance looking at temperament than like genitals, or temperament rather than gender. And I think at the very end, he says, I don't even know if he knows it's as insightful as it was when he said it. I think he said, if you want to know what a woman is, why don't you go out and marry one and find out, or something, which is actually how we do explore language. You go out into the world, you associate concepts with things, and that's how it goes. So in that sense, sorry, this is a big ramble. Like, the film is interesting in that like Jordan Peterson does actually give way more nuanced responses than I would have thought, but Matt Walsh just like nods his head, and then at the end his wife gives like the best answer. But I hate the topic because it brushes over so many really complicated aspects of how language and ontology and categories are used and constructed and how they exist, just to try to like own trans people, which I think is really dumb. I think you can be like pro or against trans people, but like at the very least like treat like language with the due respect it has. But yeah, that was
It's a good answer.
Yeah, I actually think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think about Jordan Peterson?
Jordan Peterson is very smart and insightful when he talks about psychology, and he's very fucking stupid when he talks about anything besides psychology. So when he's talking about like politics, history, social problems, I just like, it's the worst thing ever. When he talks about psychology, I think he's generally pretty insightful, but he doesn't seem to do that as much anymore. He seems like he's on the politics
It seems
grind.
like he roots a lot of his political beliefs in psychology.
Maybe.
Like he relates everything back to psychology.
Yeah, he
How
tries
that
to,
human
but like
brain works.
it's hard to stretch. He makes, I don't know. Listen to him talk about like like he's even against like, I think like adults doing like trans surgery. Like, didn't he come out against Elliot Page, I think? Yeah.
Elliot.
Like he's an adult.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. Jordan Peterson on politics is very sad. It's like listening to Elon Musk talk about anything besides like, I guess like aeronautics or startups or business or whatever. Like when Elon Musk wants to talk about like AI and politics and shit, and it's like, I don't think you have any idea what you're talking about. I don't know why you think you should be talking about this, but you know.
But do you have any concerns about what Matt Walsh was bringing up in the documentary of like how we're making it, like putting it in public school systems, the books that are being shown to children that are kind of not promoting, but kind of like, I mean, in a sense, showing them something that maybe like most parents wouldn't want their child to be seeing at a public school?
I think it's a really complicated question. I think you need a lot of data to figure it out. I think that trans stuff needs to be handled very delicately in a research medical setting and in a social setting. And I don't think either side wants to handle it very delicately right now. Like the left is like way too overbearing with how they push it. And they seem to refuse the acknowledgement that any amount of people could just be like non-binary or whatever because their friends are, which is probably the case, especially in college. And then people on the right are like, I don't even know if they think trans people exist anymore, or they just want to ban it completely, or at least for all children. I think I hate giving answers like this. Like both sides need to come together in the middle. It's not so much that. It's like what people. The problem is that like politically, especially on LGBT stuff, people always define themselves as like the reaction to the other side. So like on the left for a long time, like conservatives like we didn't want gay marriage, like stop all this shit or whatever. And so conservatives were very anti-LGBT everything. And then progressives start to win a little bit. And it's like, okay, well you guys are anti everything. We're going to be like pushing this as hard as possible. And so like now, like even kids should have access to trans treatment. And then conservatives will be like, okay, well now nobody should have it. Like this is horrible. We've corrupted society. Michael Knowles, like transgenderism is a new religion that needs to go away. And like everybody's just like triggering the f out of each other and not actually trying to figure out like what is like the most data-driven acceptable answer that we should have. Can we accurately identify a kid as who's trans? If we can, we should probably give a medication for it. If we can't, we should probably wait till they're a little bit older. Like that should be like a pretty simple
Why
question.
do you think that the people are so fed up with, or not fed up, but like focused on the action of debate and being right versus actually trying to solve the problem? Do you think that these people think that what they're doing is right, or do you think that they
probably think what they're doing is right?
So you think that they think they're acting in good faith?
Yeah, but the problem is generally people fight from ideological platforms, and the individual policy issues are just like vectors for them to spread their ideology. Like that's literally it. But they identify with like a whole thing, so they can never change any of those individual opinions. Like for instance, if somebody tells me that he's an Andrew Tate fan, I also know that 99% likely he's anti-vax, 99% likely he thinks that the prior election was stolen, 99% likely he thinks that like Bill Gates and the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab are trying to control shit. Probably doesn't think anthropomorphic climate change is real. Probably supports Donald Trump. Like I know all these beliefs on a person. I can't change their mind on any of those beliefs because they're bought into an entire system that mandates strict adherence to every single one of those things. And to be fair, it's similar on the left too with like a collection of beliefs as well. But like that, so when any particular issue comes up, like I need to find out, like if I talk to somebody, for instance, and I'm like, oh, like I think that like, I think we should mandate vaccines for children in school. Like for a person that's really roped into that echo chamber, to that epistemic bubble, that statement that I just made, that's an attack on their entire ideology. Everything is tied to everything else. There is no way that they can change their mind on one thing because it's like a ball of yarn. If you unravel even a little bit of it, it'll all come apart completely because everything relies on everything else. The vaccine has to be corrupt because Fauci and the FDA are absolutely bought off because the entire establishment is completely rigged. And that's why the election was absolutely stolen for Donald Trump. And that's why the World Economic Forum and all the people that hate him publicly and on the world stage are all against him because they all bonded, like all of it is like tied together. And if one thing comes undone, then everything falls apart.
So do you think that a big problem nowadays is that people identify with their perspectives or ideologies or belief systems, that they take that in as a part of their identity, and as soon as it starts being attacked in any shape, form, like they just completely implode?
Yeah, and the groups have gotten so big because of the internet too. Like my guess is going to be it's probably okay to have these ideological divisions and groups if they're happening at like really small levels. That's probably okay. But when they start to encompass like hundreds of millions of people, then they become so broad and they encompass so many different ideas and beliefs that it becomes impossible to, it's just not healthy for society at that stage, I think.
That's really interesting.
Makes sense. So what are your, I guess I can assume your thoughts on Andrew Tate.
He's very funny. I feel like I'd have a lot of fun chatting with him.
Do you want to chat with him?
Absolutely, yeah. I also think he's a sex trafficker. Absolutely. Unless he's lied about the things that he said. If everything he said is true on his YouTube videos and everything, then...
But then he's also said that what he said, he was exaggerating. It's not true.
Well, he said that after he's
contradicted.
After he's gotten investigated and everything. Right. But like he's laid out very specific instructions on how to traffic women, how to lure women in, how to cheat on their taxes, how to get them to work for you.
Are they proven?
No. This
proven,
just
proven to be like good methods of doing that.
Yeah, it's like standard pimping 101. Like everything he says is like very, very standard. Like he even uses some of the terminology. Like he'll talk about like bringing a new woman. He'll bring in another woman that he's been fucking for a long time, his bottom bitch. He says these terms. He'll get that woman to convince the new woman to do like kind of like sex work without him actually saying anything, so that those two will go off and he'll have his bottom bitch convince her to get into the trap, blah, blah, blah. Like he like using these terms, using these words, he's explained all of this. Yeah. Okay. And then he's even talked about like, oh yeah, like when I'm doing taxes for these women, I'm supposed to pay them, I think he says 50-50. I think he might say 50-50, but then he says, but he'll steal like 20% on the taxes because women are too stupid in these trades to do taxes. And sometimes if the woman says like, well, hold on, how much am I paying? He'll like print out some fake tax forms and give it to them. And they're like, oh, okay, I trust you. And he'll like have them sign fake shit and do it. Like he's talked in detail all of that. Now, it could all just be fake and he's like lying and exaggerating it all. But if it is true, it's obviously sex trafficking. But yeah, but I'll rest it on a contingent. Yeah.
You have said quite a few things that were really interesting because I see all of the people, or not all of the people, I shouldn't generalize like that, but a vast majority of the people on the left are like 100% he's guilty. I know he is. And if he doesn't go to jail, the system's rigged. But I did hear you say that, hey, I'm not going to really comment until I wait for the actual verdict of the trial. But what you just said is not what I expected you to say based off of what I had seen you say online.
I think generally people jump to the conclusions way too much.
Absolutely.
If anything is offered, they're automatically guilty. Otherwise, why would they even do this? I think you got to wait. You got to see until all the facts come out.
I'm curious what you've seen of mine because I try really hard to qualify that.
I just watched it. Like I was eating lunch today and I heard you say like, yeah, you know, I say what I always say. You got to wait for the verdict on the trial.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I thought you were saying I said the opposite. Okay, gotcha.
No.
Yeah.
But you just said that you thought he was 100% guilty.
If what he says is true, but that's why the trial is important, right?
Okay.
Yeah. One, this is a strategy that I tell people sometimes to help you change ideas is don't ever make an idea part of yourself unless you know 100% for it to be true. Always qualify what you're saying so you can get away from something if it ends up being incorrect. So for instance, on the Andrew Tate stuff, I don't know 100%. I'm honest about that. Now, if I were to stake a whole bunch on like, he's absolutely fucking guilty, I know it, blah, blah, blah. Well, if the trial commences and either the prosecution doesn't have enough evidence or maybe the fact that maybe he didn't do any of that things and then the trial ends, well, now I'm in a really uncomfortable spot because I tied a lot of my stake, a lot of conviction on this idea. I didn't qualify it at all. And now I either have to come out and say I was completely wrong, which undermines my character a lot, or what's more likely to happen is I say, oh, the trial was rigged, right? And this is what's going to happen with all the pro-Tate people or the anti-Tate people, depending on how the trial goes, right? No matter what happens, one side is going to say, oh, it was clearly rigged because they're so bought into the narrative that either all of the charges are fake and drummed up or that he's 100% a trafficker who's like multiple women. But if you qualify things, you're careful. So like I've said this over and over and over again, he should go to court. They should have the day in court. If what he said is true, he's definitely a trafficker, but maybe he exaggerated it. If they go to court and they find out, like they play the videos, they do the research, and a lot of it was actually just exaggerated or drummed up, and they didn't actually do these things, then it's very easy for me to point back, like, oh, hey, listen, I said if they made it up, then it's obviously not true. So yeah, he's not a trafficker, and I can get off of that very, very easily. So it saves me the ability of having strong conviction on ideas that I don't know about, and it saves my credibility and my character and my self-respect because I didn't like have to like either backtrack or just double down on some horrible thing. Yeah,
I think that's super smart, and I also think that it's a huge problem when people identify or they turn their belief system into their identity. Yeah. It just closes your mind entirely.
Yeah, because then like an attack. I'm a person that supports capitalism. I'm not like a capitalist. I am a capitalist, but like if you show me something better, I like capitalism because I think it does a lot of things really efficiently. But if you show me it doesn't, well then
you don't have a personal attachment.
Yeah, exactly. But if you have the more personal attachment to your ideas, then when somebody attacks them, they're not attacking the ideas, they're attacking your character. And that's not people don't realize your character is never up for debate. Nobody's going to come up to a debate and be like, okay, I might be a bad person who's really stupid. That's never going to happen. So if you've internalized these ideas so much, that means that anytime somebody attacks them, it's a personal attack, and now you're fighting for your life in a conversation because you don't want to be wrong or stupid, which is bad.
So what's your biggest insecurity?
I don't have any insecurities.
You don't have a single one?
No.
Yes, you do. You don't have a single insecurity.
It's gotta be something, man.
I don't know, man.
I feel like insecurities are what kind of make us human, in a sense.
I'm inhuman. Man, I grew up like relentlessly independent. I mean, like I've got a lot I had my dick pics leaked. I was streaming like 2 days later. I mean, I'm a pretty secure person.
There's nothing you're insecure about. So how have you been able to combat insecurity? Or was there a period of time in your life where you were
just because of like the way that I grew up? Like I've always been like highly internally driven. So if I'm doing something that's not good or that I don't like, I try to analyze and change it, and I'll move from there. But like the way that I view it is there's like a person that I want to be. There's an idealized version of myself, and I hope that I'm taking steps towards that all the time. And if I'm not, then I'm trying to change the path that I'm on. But I mean, like in terms of insecurity, I mean, I guess if I do like really bad in a debate or something, like that sucks. I would feel bad about that. But I'm probably scared of heights. If I go skydiving, that probably.
Yeah. What's worrying you today? What are you most worried about?
What am I most worried about today? I don't know. I guess probably like managing my career going forward. I'm like at a very interesting crossroads where I'm trying to figure out like how much of like, do I want to be like, I don't know all the time like what my role needs to be. That's like something I've thought about a lot, and I'm thinking about a lot over like the past week or whatever as I'm traveling down here. Is I don't know sometimes like figuring out like how to deal with people that are fighting with you online, figuring out like what kind of engagement should I have with people, like how respectful, how disrespectful, how staunchly should I advocate for my ideals, like should I be putting more time into like research for doing like intellectual debates, should I be like trying to expand my audience more, am I working too hard, am I not working hard enough, like I don't know, there's like a lot of stuff like that in terms of like balancing career stuff. Probably I'm sure you guys, well yeah, from earlier today, yeah, you guys have these things too, yeah. So that's probably like the thing I don't know if I'd say I'm worried about it, but there's just like a lot of challenges that always come up relating to that kind of stuff.
Where do you want to be in 5 years from now?
I really want a media company. I've got all the shit to set up a fucking studio. I bought like all the cameras, all the equipment or whatever. I've got it like laid out. I just need to set it up and start recording. I feel like once I have a podcast, I can kind of grow out from there. But like having a media company, I think would be the coolest thing in the world. Like I hate talking about what everybody else is talking about. It's fun sometimes to like decide like this is what we're going to talk about today and then set like the discourse for stuff. So that would be like my dream.
I think you'd have a crazy podcast.
Maybe, yeah. Hopefully, yeah.
That would be really good.
I'd love to see that. So for the media company, would you just like to be like a Daily Wire?
I think the Daily Wire is the best template. It's really good. They've got a lot of talent. They do a lot with them, making films. Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Talented people.
Yeah. And it's very concise, the way that they work together and everything. Yeah. Good on Benny Boy and everybody. Yeah, they do. They run a tight ship. So
who would you like to have on? Are there any other streamers that we might know that you would love to say like, hey, we'd love for you to join this media company?
I don't even know how I would begin to pick talent. I feel like the way that it would work is I'd probably start my show and then I would just kind of start looking at other people and see if anybody, but like the first thing I have to do is I got to start my shit and then I'll probably go from there.
Do it.
Yeah.
I think that'd be fantastic.
What do you think is the biggest threat to humanity?
Climate change.
It's funny. That was my answer.
What is the biggest threat to humanity? On a very broad sense, I think the splitting of us into these different epistemic worlds where we have totally different realities is like destroying our ability to communicate with each other. And I worry if that continues to happen and continues to accelerate outwards, that I don't know if it would be civil war or just like a total breakdown in government because we can't pass any legislation. I think that that's probably the biggest threat right now. What is it? A nation divided against itself cannot stand. We have a really hard time working with each other right now. That's really, really, really bad. And I think that's probably the biggest problem facing us. Like when I look at the United States during COVID, as soon as the United States got its shit together, in my opinion, I think one of the biggest success stories of like capitalism and American ingenuity, I know a lot of people get triggered, but I think it was the manufacturing of the mRNA viruses. It represented like the best of humanity, the best of globalism, the best of the world. It was Pfizer, an American international company working with BioNTech, German company that researching for public research and private research mRNA vaccines for 30 years. Once we figured out like what was going on in like 8 months, we had like a revolutionary vaccine rolled out. We distributed what Biden, I think, came in and wanted to do like 100 million doses in 100 days or something, and he did it in like 50. Like everything was so amazing. When America is like united on an issue, we have the capability to like move heaven and earth. Like I think the United States working as one joint body trying to accomplish something can do anything, but we're so schizophrenic on all of our shit right now that we just can't come together and agree on anything because every single issue is so politicized. So yeah, I think the divisions we have amongst ourselves are the biggest problem that we have right now. Yeah.
It's a great answer. That's probably one of the best answers.
I agree with that. I'm kind of the same type. I think it's just closed-mindedness in general.
Sure.
Because I used to say it was the media, and then I thought it was closed-mindedness, and then you think like what causes closed-mindedness, and you try to come to the root of it, but I think it's just being closed-minded.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
What do you think is the meaning of life?
That's another one I've been working with a lot. I think that there is some sense of fulfillment to be found by working together along other people at the things that you're really good at. So everybody has like a particular set of like gifts and abilities. I think that we kind of owe it to ourselves in society to pursue this as much as possible. And then while doing that, like maximize your existence like a social creature. So family, friends, and all of that stuff. It's like very, very, very broad, but that might look differently for a lot of people. So say you're a person that's like a really high aptitude for medicine. Like for you, like your fulfillment and meaning in life might be, you know, being the best doctor you can be, giving as much to society as you can, getting that like high level of personal fulfillment because you're doing something for yourself, you're doing something for other people. Hopefully you got a family stuff too. You might be a musician that can make like really cool music. You might be a streamer, I guess. It is really cool streaming or whatever. But yeah, I think that like searching for some like really broad sense of like fulfillment, and then trying to balance it out with all sorts of like happiness, right? Where fulfillment is like that really deep, like I'm doing things that are above and beyond myself or society, but also doing the things like keep me happy and like motivated or whatever. Like finding a balance between that and then working socially with everybody else is like on the broadest level, I think probably the meaning of what you should be trying to do.
And how fulfilled are you? Like if you were to give it on a 1 to 10 scale, how's everything going for you?
Super lucky. I'm like at a 9.5 for fulfillment. Like I get to do like the coolest stuff like every single day in my life. Like I'm the most lucky fucking person in the world. So yeah.
As an influencer, how responsible are you for the actions of your viewers, beliefs of your viewers, and your thoughts and your impact on your viewers? How much do you take this into consideration when going live / voicing your opinion?
I think you have a high level of responsibility. People might disagree on the level of responsibility you have, but at the very least, I wish that people would acknowledge that you have a big impact on your audience. If I go out and I say a certain thing for a long period of time, my audience is slowly going to start to believe that, and depending on the opinion, there are going to be certain obvious actions that stem from those beliefs. So if I go on stream every single day and I say, I hate kids, we need to kill all kids, I hate children, blah, 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 blah. If like, 5 years from now, people in my audience start to like abuse children or like attack children or whatever, like it's pretty immediately downstream from the things that I'm saying. So I think that you like when parents used to say you are who you hang around, right? Or garbage in, garbage out. Ultimately, I've also heard that like you are your 5 best friends, like the summation of their thoughts or whatever. If I'm talking to people for 8 hours a day, if I'm speaking a lot, I'm doing a lot, the things that I'm saying, I know that slowly I'm going to change their mind over time, and they're slowly going to believe me they're going to start to think things I think. So actions are reasonably going to stem from those particular thoughts as well. So I would hope that the messages that I'm putting out are encouraging actions that I want people to take. And then, you ultimately, I think you're responsible for that. Now, there's some limitations there. If you've got like an audience of like 10 million and one guy goes out and, randomly shoots up a school and you're like a makeup streamer, like you're probably not responsible for that. But if I'm telling people over and over again, like the government's coming to take your guns, you got to be ready to fight. We got to fight to keep our guns. We got to fight for this. Like we can't let blah, 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 like blah, blah, blah. And like, some number of my audience start, like shoots up like a police department or like shoots up like a Congress for a guy that's going to vote on like anti-gun legislation. I mean, like you're kind of like at the end of the day, like a lot of those thoughts might be downstream from the thing that I'm saying. So I try to be careful of that.
Thank you so much for coming on the Iced Coffee Hour.